Hello, and welcome to A Word of Hope for this Thursday of the 29th week in Ordinary Time. I'm Brother Joe Trout, coming to you from St. Vincent Fair Parish. And today's gospel is quite a striking one. We have Jesus telling us that he has come not to bring peace, but the sword. And this seems to fly in the face of all of this Prince of Peace language that we have around Christ, that he's come to bring life, right? How are we to make sense of it? Right? Like, we're living in times where I think pretty readily and pretty rightfully we hear people complaining about the divisiveness of our world and that it's a problem. Is Jesus saying that that actually is a part of how things go, and that divisiveness is just a part of our church, and that that it's actually part of his goal? Is that what he's saying to us? To some degree, it has to be, right? This isn't a soft message, and it's a challenge to me personally. Like, I honestly don't really read a lot of Catholic news. I don't pay a lot of attention to the Catholic world, particularly on the internet, because I find it to be a pretty hostile environment. I think a lot of it is just laden with anxiety. There's a lot of just anger going on, and a lot of indignation. And yet, oddly, there is one agreement that I find is pretty broadly there across the spectrum, and it's that something is wrong in our world and we ought to be fixing it, that there's a serious culture problem, and that we need to reshape our culture, whether it needs to be in more responsibility to one another or more of a sense of the primacy of our conscience or whatnot, right? But actually, I think that might be going astray a little bit. So Dominican Yves Congar, one of the great theologians of the 20th century, wrote in his later reflections on the church that, in fact, the church shouldn't be trying to reshape the culture, that we shouldn't focus on that at all, that our mission is to form disciples of Christ. And that probably will reshape the culture, but you can't directly reshape culture because it's a reflection of people and their values and so many other things, that it comes about as a side effect. And that our mission as the church should be to call people to ponder Christ, to contemplate the Word and to become that Word and to live that Word in the world. And the reality is that doing that is divisive, but in a different way. That if in fact you choose to walk away from the power games of the world, from chasing after honor or wealth or pleasure, if you choose to walk away from that, you are separating yourself from a lot of people. That there is something that the world is kind of confused by. Why aren't you playing the game? And in our day and age too, if you choose to walk away from the constant anger and outrage, and yet still be invested in community and one another, people don't really know what to make out of that. It's a real divide. And so I'd ask us to ponder today, how are we called to be disciples who are really bringing the Word of God into the world without playing the games of the world? How do we be separated out from something that is really like looking into a mirror, constantly focused on ourselves and our own anxieties and our own kind of preoccupations, and instead be devoted to a life ready for God and for the Word to break forth into this world? And are we willing to be separated out that way? Am I willing to really be different without caring about that and just be focused on God? Thank you, and God bless.